Hey, discerning listeners, The Single Life. Let's watch.
Away. Since then, I've dedicated my life to my adult son, Colt, who's lived with me all of his life. But things right now are not that good between us. It all started when Colt and his wife, Vanessa, blindsided me about them leaving me.
We're going to move out.
Okay, so it felt like she was blindsided, but from my memory, she wasn't blindsided. One could say she had years to prepare, given that Colt is, I think, in his 30s, late 30s or something, at least mid-30s, and she should probably at least predict the possibility, especially when he started to be involved with Vanessa, get engaged, that kind of thing. But even if we didn't consider that, he eventually told her, and gave her months of time to prepare. So it felt hurtful to her, and I know a lot of people criticize her for that, and it's unfair, particularly the way she communicates with him. I mean, she berates him, and I think the only reason why he can move forward is because Vanessa is there. And I think it represents a pattern in their relationship, an enmeshment that was beneficial to the two of them. You know, my hypothesis was that when, and who knows, you know, I'm so curious as to what their relationship was like when it was the three of them, when it was Colt, mom, and dad. What was the dad like? How did he fit into the picture emotionally, and what role did he have? It's a big question mark. They never talk about him. But he died, and so there's a lot of possibilities as to what happened, but who knows? But at the very least, after the father died, it was very hard for the two of them, and so they bonded together. I don't think they had a lot of people outside of the two of them. And Colt, I think in particular, felt like it was his responsibility to take care of his mom. And that's a good thing, right? You would want people to care about their family. But I think the mom, one, probably didn't have other people to depend on, and two, probably had isolated herself maybe even further, and three, I think had a particular hard time adjusting. And also, four, I think put pressure on Colt to allow an enmeshment to exist that I think he might, if he could have it his way, I think he would have been fine supporting her in a very intense way for the first year or so, which would have really been going above and beyond to some extent. But after that point, I think he would have wanted some distance. Although it's hard to say. He might have actually wanted it just as badly as she did, because he was suffering too. But anyway, at a certain point, he really started wanting to have some distance. And I think they did establish it emotionally, even though they were in the same house. There seemed to be some indication of that. So then she is told by them, like, he's moving out, and she was really hurt by that, and she could not be differentiated through that process. You know, it wasn't like she reacted with anger and upsetness and hurt, and then later said, like, well, I mean, you're a grown man. Well, I mean, I take that back. During a tell-all, she was at least consciously saying that it was a good thing that he was moving out, or it was okay, or that it made sense or something. But there's a lot of footage of her berating him and being rigid and saying, you know, this is unfair, you're abandoning me, you're surprised, you know, you didn't give me enough time or something. And then when they actually started looking for apartments that she could afford, she didn't want to take that, I think because she just wanted any excuse to not move forward with things, and it was causing tension, and so Colt was caught in the middle. Vanessa was being pretty cool about the whole thing. You know, she wasn't like Larissa, you know, she was trying, but saying, let's get this ball rolling, and they seem to be heading in that direction. I forget where we left off with that, but anyway, yeah, I think the mom has some issues around all of that, and I don't know if that's been resolved.
Now in 3 months.
Well, thanks for sharing this with me. And Colt just got more and more angry with me.
I am 36 years old. Stop treating me like I'm a kid. It's just crazy. Do this, do that. Go get my bag, do this.
Even if our door's closed at the room, hey Cole, it's nonstop.
Yeah, so I think I remember thinking at the time during this tell-all that he felt emboldened by the cameras to be able to confront his mom about things that he's wanted to confront her about perhaps his entire life. But away from this scene, I don't think it didn't seem to me that he's ever really communicated to her in a calm way. Now, regardless, the mom should hear this and say, okay, well, maybe I'm going too far. And my hope is that she, Debbie, could have friends, could have family members, could have a partner, other people that she could feel validated and close to, right? She, I think, is oriented towards Colt because I think she believes she will never find people that will be there for her. I think she has a schema around something around that makes her be very demoralized about developing relationships, or there's some kind of shyness or something. So she's absolutely desperate, as we all are, for relationships, and I think she thinks Colt is the only safe person that she can be friends with. And again, it just makes me wonder about the dynamic between the dad and the mom. Was the dad abusive? I wouldn't be surprised if there was some issue around that, and that Colt and Debbie banded, together against it, and Colt even might have even protected her in some way, or was a confidant. I don't know. It's just total speculation, of course. Maybe the dad was a saint and an angel. There's no way for us to know at this point because they don't talk about it. But anyway, so it's fine that Colt was voicing this, but what I would hope that he would do is go on a campaign over time away from the cameras and say, hey, Mom, I love you and I want a relationship with you, but I want to have my own life, and I want you to have other people in your life. So let's start moving in that direction. And to be honest with you, if you don't start doing those things at a certain point, I'm just going to move out because, and I'll feel kind of bad, but honestly, it's your choice to not develop other relationships, to not have a life outside of the two of us, to not start to adjust. That's you. It's on you to make that choice. So you go on a campaign of that. Now, of course, first she's going to react negatively, but you just, because in her head, she interprets it as I'm doomed and you hate me. And that's how she tends to react. But if you're broken record, you just say, no, I don't hate you and you're not doomed. I want a relationship with you, just not like this. And I've always loved you and I still will. And I always, so you just keep at it, and eventually, but it's up to Debbie. She can make a choice as to whether or not she wants to let that in or not.
Doubt.
We're done. The way they treated me was so hurtful, I can't help but feeling betrayed. He and I have some problems, and I don't know that we can work them out. And for now, I'm alone.
Right, so they moved out, or Vanessa moved out, it sounded like, if I remember right. And then it looks like Colt might have moved out with her or something. And she uses that word betrayed. I don't know if many people, at least from the footage that we've seen, would characterize what happened as betrayal. That a grown man, after years and years of going above and beyond to take care of his mom, eventually decided to move out. And they tried to make it work, the three of them in the house, and it just wasn't comfortable. And I think it came down to, for Vanessa, I think she might have eventually, I wouldn't be surprised if she said, look, either we leave or we're done. I want to be with you, Colt, but I just can't do this anymore. By the way, I didn't realize she's a Star Wars fan.
But there's so much more to me than Colt's mom. I want my own life now. I'm looking for a solid relationship. I'm putting myself out there, but I'm not doing so well. I suck at this.
I mean, she's laughing, which is good, but I would hope that she wouldn't think that. I mean, everyone of any age, it's hard, especially with blind dates, right? Because the chance that you can gauge a compatibility by looking at people's profiles is pretty low. When you meet people in person, you get a vibe, you get a little bit more information so you can gauge whether or not there's some compatibility there. So I don't think she's dated that many people. I don't know the exact number, but I wouldn't be surprised that probably would take Debbie going on 50 or more first dates with people, and then you whittle it down to, and of course you have to cast a wider net than 50 because you have to, there's every step of the way it gets reduced, right? So you cast a net to 1,000 and say 100 are interested in chatting and 50 are interested in meeting in person and 20 are interested in the second date and 10 are you and them are interested in a 10th date or something. And then of those 10, then there's maybe one or two that you have similar goals in life or that kind of thing. And so, 1,000 people, 500 or 100 people chatting, 50, But people don't think that way, and that's the way that I recommend people think of it. Now, the first person you meet on Tinder or whatever might be the one. You might just, when you roll the dice, sometimes it just comes up exactly the number you're looking for, but it's not frequent, right? So the reason why I say this is because a lot of people that I work with, clients, will become demoralized after going on a couple of these sorts of dates, and I'm just like, and then they'll give up. They'll, I'm a loser, or people today, everyone's just looking for a hookup and all this kind of stuff. And certainly there's elements of that depending on the culture and the pocket that you're in and the places you're looking. But to just give up is just not understanding probability. And I always say, it's a numbers game. Now, for some people, they don't want to do that. It's just too much. For those of you who listen to the audio podcast, Bob, he met his wife 17 years ago-ish. And prior to that, he met her online dating, Match.com, and had been on online dating for years, and I think he had estimated he had met up with something like 300 to 500 women. It took that many tries before he actually found the one. Now, I don't think that's the average. I think that's above average in terms of how many people you'd have to meet up with, but it just makes sense to me. And so I would hope that she would say, well, yeah, I've had 2 or 3 dates and it hasn't worked out yet, but that's to be expected. That's the whole thing. I just wish that people had the expectation. I guess as an analogy that everyone, I think, can relate to, you plan on buying a new pair of jeans and you really don't know what brand you want. You might not even know what sort of jeans you want. You just want jeans. And you go to the mall. What's the chance that the very first pair of jeans that you happen to notice at the first store is going to be that pair of jeans? It's probably not even in your size, right? So everyone understands that. It's like, well, let's look at it. Well, no, you got to put hands on, try, and then you narrow down to a certain number to try on, and then you narrow down further, right? There's all these criteria. No one goes, I'm getting jeans, and the first ones I happen to just randomly come across, I'm going to buy and take home. Like, the chances of that working. And then if you did that, and he's like, well, I'm a failure at buying jeans. It's like, no, it just takes time. You got to go through a lot of jeans before you find that one that you fall in love with.
I do have to say that I didn't feel a love connection, okay?
I don't want to be the friend. No, I want to be the
I really hate to cut this short, but I have to get up early for work.
married?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, pretty universal experiences with dating. That first fella that she liked didn't feel it, and he told her in a very nice way. A lot of people will just ghost you. Or they'll say the next day or something over text or something, but he probably pretty quickly realized that there wasn't a spark there for him. And then and they had a good time and they had a good conversation, had a couple drinks, he drops her off and he's just like, I just want to let you know I'm just not really feeling it. No harm, no foul. That, again, totally normal, right? It hurts, and there's a tendency for people to turn that into anger and judgment. It's just like, oh, he led me on, or he was a jerk face, or he was judging me. And, maybe those things are true, but if those things aren't really evident, then it just hurts to have, you're like, ooh, I think I like this person, and then they're like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. Yeah, it's devastating. It can be really ego shredding in those moments. But again, what's the chance that, one, you're going to like someone, and two, they're also going to like you? It's a lot to ask. It's a pretty low probability of those things working out all the time. So, and then she got upset, which is totally understandable, but I think she kind of concluded that he was a D-bag or something when there wasn't really evidence of that.
I went home with him that night. Stayed with him for a couple of weeks. We got married 6 months later. My son Cole was born 2 years later, and we were married 27 years until he passed away 13 years ago. My husband and I had a great relationship. He was a great father. He was a great provider. He loved our cats.
Okay, so at least that detail, that statement is that he was not abusive and that he was a good father and that he loved cats. So maybe it was just a great relationship relatively, and the loss was really hard on her, and so that's when she turned to Colt as her life preserver in a sea of loneliness.
Hello. We had, at one time, 15 foster cats. Stay. Uh-oh, there goes Cookie. The day came when we had to take them back so they could be adopted, and Hardy called me on the phone and he goes, "Can I keep them? I don't want to leave now."
Well, now I love this guy. I'm glad we're getting some details on this. Yeah, I can't imagine having a bunch of cats that you're fostering and then just seeing them go. That would actually be. But 15, I think. But honestly, if I could get away with it in my house and not be inconvenienced terribly, I would have more than 15 cats. I think it would just be really fun. But I think it's not very practical. There's just so many things about it that would be problematic. But I don't know. Sometimes I'm jealous of people that are foster, and just the wonderful people who would do that, the big hearts that people would have. My dog is barking.
So I said, that's fine. Besides my 5 cats that are alive here, we have 5 cats that are passed away. We had them cremated. Then we have Harley. We had him cremated, and we were going to spread his ashes, probably take a trip to Tahoe, but I haven't done it. I don't know if I want to yet. I'm not.
Yeah, that's not uncommon for people to take their time when it comes to spreading ashes, because it can feel like there's a finality to it or something. It also is just hard to face sometimes, also hard to coordinate, because you feel like you really want to do it right, but you don't really know how. It's not uncommon for people to do that. Grief is tough, and I think she represents a pretty common presentation, honestly, of a lot of pain.
Harley always said to me, if I should die tomorrow, I would like you to, move on. And I said the same thing to him. I just didn't feel ready to. But after 13 years, I don't want to be alone. I want to fall in love. I need love now.
So this points to what we call a companionate role in family therapy, where she had a very close relationship with her husband, and they were very involved with each other, and the death was very hard. I don't know if we know the circumstances around the death too. Was it prolonged as an illness, or was it sudden? Because if it's sudden, that can cause more complications, because you didn't have time to prepare or say goodbye or anything. And so who knows? But then she turned to Colt, and the relationship developed into what we call a companionate role, maybe even a marital role. They're sort of related enmeshment types of relationships, in which the style and the emotional needs that are being met by one or both people is more closely to a marriage or a friendship rather than a mother and a son, right? Now, you can be very close to your parents and not have it be pathological. And this is maybe the key, is that when closeness exists with flexibility, and people are getting their needs met, and there's enough flexibility in the rules and the behaviors and the closeness in the relationship that they can get their needs met, then that's not pathological. But when we're talking about rigid relationships, where you have a lot of involvement with rigidity and there's a lack of flexibility, that's when you have problems. Because as individuals, and I think particularly Colt, starts to have feelings like, oh, I have this need, and it's going to hurt my mom. It's going to bother her. It's going to inconvenience her, or something like that. And if there are mechanisms in the relationship or in the system that keeps Colt in that role, unable to maybe even notice what his needs are, then we're talking about pathological enmeshment. And that's the key, because a lot of times people will say, like, my husband calls his mom every day. That's pathological, or something wrong with that. And it's like, no, it's just different than what you have experienced. What you want to ask or look at is there flexibility? Because it's possible that your husband actually has a lot of needs that he gets met through his mom, through his closeness with his mom. And if he ever had feelings of wanting to do something else that might interfere with that relationship with his mom, he has that flexibility, but he just doesn't want to. But I say that because I just feel like people will automatically label something as creepy or enmeshed or over-involved, or what people frame as codependent. It's not codependency, when it's actually just a difference in preference or culture.
My son Cole and I were having some problems, and we had a huge fight. He and his wife Vanessa came and told me, we're moving out in 3 months. Okay, we have a huge rent, and I can't afford all the bills on my own. So I felt really broken. Colt and Vanessa moved out about a month ago.
Okay, so we're learning they moved out about a month ago, and she uses the word broken. Tells you something, right? It'd be one thing to say, well, I'm really sad and I feel lonely or I feel hurt or something like that, but broken, that's particular. I think that actually might get closer to what she's going through. And the way she describes is like, yeah, they completely just blindsided me. And she mocks them as, 3 months. It's like, that's a long time. And then she says that she can't afford it. So I think she's still in the same house. Does that mean that Colt, is paying the bills? I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening. And that, that's fine. They have their arrangements. But there was an apartment that she could afford. It wasn't a super nice place, but there was a place in her budget. But she didn't want to live there because it was not to her liking, which, again, I understand. But you'd think you'd be like, well, this is what I can afford, so I guess this is it.
And I haven't seen him since. The hell is all this? Colt said he's going to come by and he wants to get some of his things out of here. And he said he wanted to talk. This is
Okay, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I wonder if it's, hey, you're going to have to move out of here because I can't pay the bills. Plus, this whole entire house just for you. It's unreasonable. So, well, I don't know. We'll find out what happens.
the longest time that I have gone without talking to him or seeing him. It's very difficult for me. God. Stop.
Yeah, that's one of the tragedies of a situation like this. I don't know about them, but they probably had a lot of good aspects to their relationship, a lot of supportive aspects, closeness. And because she's not aware and or they're not in family therapy, this would be perfect for family therapy, by the way. She is overly hurt and overly angry and overly rigid, and then he tries and tries and tries. Eventually, the only way he can manage it is just completely cut off from her. And it's just to give up all of that closeness and that history and that goodwill and that support, because she isn't aware of what's happening for her. She can't regulate her emotions. She can't find other people to meet her needs in terms of closeness, and hasn't been working on that the entire time. All right, well, that's that episode. Tune in next time when I continue watching the show. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.